From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
A historic mobilization in Vancouver against the 2010 Winter Olympics has pushed back hard against the International Olympic Committee and the $6 billion sporting event.
People said you couldn't go outside of a designated protest area. Well, the world is my designated protest area.
Protests at the opening weekend of the Winter Olympics in Vancouver. We get a report from the streets, and we'll stay in Vancouver to speak with the chair of the Impact on Communities Coalition. Then what's the relationship between the mind and the immune system, between mental health and physical health? Part 2 of our conversation with Vancouver physician Gabor Mate, who wrote, "When the Body Says No, Understanding the Stress-Disease Connection." All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thousands of U.S. and NATO forces have launched one of the largest military offensives of the 8-year war in an attempt to remove the Taliban from the city of Marja in Helmand province. U.S. officials have described the operation as a success so far, but on Sunday, 12 Afghans died when 2 rockets fired by NATO slammed into the wrong house. Afghan President Hamid Karzai has called for an investigation into the deaths. 10 of those killed were from the same family. The U.S. said the dead included 9 civilians and 3 insurgents. Prior to the errant bombing, Admiral Mike Mullen, chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said a goal of the operation is to have no civilian casualties.
It's off to a good start. There's great focus on, and President Karzai has made this point, and I think this is critical, on having, we would like to have no civilian casualties. I mean, this is focused on the people. This is not focused on the Taliban. And it is a strategy that will not just clear the area, but that will hold it and then build right behind it. So there's a civilian component here, and there's a local governance piece, which is going to be installed immediately as well.
While the operation is being described as one of the largest of the war, it's unclear how many members of the Taliban remain in the region to fight. Many members of the Taliban are believed to have fled into Pakistan after the U.S. warned the attack on Marja was imminent. The assault's the first test of President Obama's plan to send 30,000 more troops to seize insurgent-held areas and smooth the way for permanent government rule in the area. Many Marja residents say they fled to nearby towns to avoid the U.S. assault.
We escaped from the area because of the fighting. I am demanding that the government help us here. Some members of my family are sick. We need medicines and other help as soon as possible.
The Washington Post reports President Obama has authorized dozens of assassinations of al-Qaeda leaders and its allies since taking office. During the same period, the administration has not reported capturing any high-value prisoners. The Obama administration's authorized targeted killings more frequently than the George W. Bush administration did in its final years, including in countries where U.S. ground operations are officially unwelcome or especially dangerous. In September, U.S. Special Operations Forces operating in Somalia decided to blow up a car carrying the leader of al-Qaeda in East Africa instead of trying to capture him. The U.S. have carried out at least 2 strikes inside Yemen. The Post reports U.S. personnel have also worked closely on counterterrorism missions with local forces in Indonesia and the Philippines. Tens of thousands of Haitians gathered in Port-au-Prince Friday for a national day of mourning, held 1 month after the devastating earthquake killed more than 230,000 and left over 1 million people homeless. Haitian President René Préval asked Haitians to dry their eyes and rebuild their shattered country.
Some pain can't be described in words. The only answer for all of that pain has been to look for some help until now, above all outside. The pain is so heavy. Today, we the Haitian people have to mourn our dead with dignity.
During a trip to Haiti, UN Emergency Relief Coordinator John Holmes said the 2 top priorities for Haiti are now shelter and sanitation.
Sanitation is a huge issue, complicated as is shelter by the number of sites that are there, the fluctuating populations in those sites, the need to move people from one site to another in some cases because where they are is not going to be sustainable in the rainy season. But this is a major challenge. We need to construct something like 25,000 latrines of one sort or another, whether they be dug latrines, trench latrines, or portable latrines. I don't want to go into too much detail, but that's the issue. And there we've still probably, we're not more than 5 or 10% of the way there, so there's a huge challenge there too.
Despite President Obama's call to curtail the power of lobbyists in Washington, new figures show a record amount of money was spent on federal lobbying in 2009. The Center for Responsive Politics puts the total at nearly $3.5 billion, a 5% increase over 2008. The pharmaceutical and health products industry spent nearly $267 million on lobbying, the greatest amount ever spent on lobbying efforts by a single industry. The Chamber of Commerce spent over $144 million on lobbying, a 60% increase over 2008. Other big spenders on lobbying included ExxonMobil, the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, known as PhRMA, General Electric, Pfizer, Blue Cross Blue Shield, AARP, American Medical Association, Chevron, the National Association of Realtors, and the American Beverage Association. Sheila Krumholtz of the Center for Responsive Politics said, quote, lobbying appears recession-proof. Even when companies are scaling back other operations, many view lobbying as a critical tool in protecting their future interests. The New York Times reports Wall Street tactics akin to the ones that fostered subprime mortgages in America have worsened the European financial crisis by enabling governments to hide their mounting debts. One deal created by Goldman Sachs helped Greece obscure billions in debt from the budget overseers in Brussels. Goldman Sachs is said to be the most important of more than a dozen banks used by the Greek government to manage its national debt using derivatives. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton accused Iran of heading towards a military dictatorship and warned it poses an international threat. During a speech in Qatar, Clinton claimed the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is seizing control of large swaths of Iran's political, military, and economic establishment. On Sunday, she urged Iran to reconsider what she described as Iran's dangerous nuclear policy. Clinton spoke at the U.S. Islamic World Forum in Qatar.
What does Iran have to hide? Why is Iran refusing to live up to its international obligations, which would lead to political and economic integration with the international community that would actually benefit the Iranian people? Iran leaves the international community little choice but to impose greater costs for its provocative steps. Together, we are encouraging Iran to reconsider its dangerous policy decisions.
While the U.S. is threatening to impose new sanctions on Iran, the Iranian human rights attorney Shirin Ebadi said only political sanctions should be considered, not economic sanctions.
As I said earlier, I am against economic sanctions and military attacks. However, if the Iranian government continues to violate human rights and continues to ignore people's demands, then I would start thinking about political sanctions.
Shirin Ebadi won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2003. The Israeli military has announced it will reroute part of the West Bank separation wall 2.5 years after the Israel Supreme Court ordered the state to return land to Palestinian farmers in the village of Bil'in. Israeli activist Jonathan Pollack said years of weekly protests in Bil'in have forced Israel to reroute the wall.
It took 2.5 years since the court decision and twice the state being held in contempt for this to happen. And it should be clear that the only reason that this is happening now is 5 years of persistent struggle and sacrifice by the people of Bil'in. This is an Israeli attempt to pacify resistance, but and while being a victory, this is only a partial victory, and it should be clear that the resistance to the wall will continue wherever it is built, in Bil'in as well, until the wall is dismantled entirely.
Palestinian activists organized another protest against the West Bank separation wall Friday. Protesters dressed and painted themselves as the native blue Na'vi character from the Oscar-nominated blockbuster film Avatar. One Palestinian activist said, quote, "We are here